Yeah, let the big dog hunt. Hello again, everybody. Joe Staszak, along with my man, Steve Kallas, time for another episode of Kallas Remarks. And it is Steven's birthday today. Happy birthday, my friend.
Thanks, Joe. I'm counting backwards by now, so
Yeah.
we can move on from there.
I wish we could. All right, well, let's get right into it, man. I mean, I don't get the preseason at all anymore. At least I thought I got it a little bit. Now, Jalen Hurts has thrown 7 passes. He's supposed to be the next franchise quarterback of the Eagles. He's thrown 7 passes in the preseason. We saw Mike Tomlin the other day. He basically killed Dwayne Haskins, saying he needs more varsity work, and he played poorly in the game against the Panthers. But 7 passes, he had a stomach infection, and then they kept him out for, which they keep most of the starters out for the last game. But don't you need some work?
It's inexplicable. I mean, I don't know how the big from 4 games to 3 games to change. Some guys are going in there with the final game, playing their guys. Other guys aren't. I don't know if they said with Hurts. I think the Jets had announced that they weren't going to play, that they were playing their 2s. And so he didn't want him to play against the subs, or he didn't want to use the start. It makes no sense.
No.
Nor does it, by the way. How about Zach Wilson? He didn't play.
No.
If anything, the best quarterback on those 2 teams right now is Joe Flacco.
It was great last night.
Without question. I will say this for the Eagles, as you've said many times, the most important guy, the second most important guy on the team is the backup quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
The Eagles have one.
They do.
The Jets don't. The Jets don't, by the way. And at least Hurts has played a few games. Wilson hasn't. So to see them march down the field on the Jets the first 2 times they had the ball, which is something you wanted to see after getting shut out by the Patriots, I think gives them a little hope. But all right, you're protecting Jalen Hurts so he doesn't get hurt, so he doesn't get any reps. You're protecting Zach Wilson so he doesn't get hurt, so he doesn't get any reps in the final game. I understand in the old days what the 4th game was, but everybody played a lot in the 3rd game.
Right.
But you're also not talking about young quarterbacks here. These are 2 as young quarterbacks as you could get, with as little experience as you could have, including Jalen Hurts with a few games last year. Again, it makes no sense to me. I don't know how it works. Hey, Patrick Mahomes played 2 drives yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Mahomes.
A little bit of work. Right, exactly.
And by the way, he finally looked like Patrick Mahomes because he wasn't so good, but nobody expected him not to be Patrick Mahomes.
Right, of course.
Yesterday he showed. Yeah, I was mystified. And then to top it all off for the Eagles defense, they do special teams. They throw a Hail Mary on the last play of the game and make the 2-point conversion. So the Jets are 2-0-1. But they're in deep trouble. Lawson's out for the year. I mean, they've missed a bunch of guys. And I'll just move on quickly to Trevor Lawrence. He didn't look very good to me at all either. ATN's out for the season already, and he's a good back. I know he's a very good back. He's a good back. So I see deep problems for Urban Meyer and the Jags. I think their over/under is 6, I want to say, and I don't see how they're getting.
I don't think they're getting there. Yeah,
it might be lower than 6 now. I'm not sure. But I don't know if Urban Meyer is ready for prime time. Most of these college coaches are not. And I don't know, Trevor Lawrence, he had such incredible escapability in college, and he showed no escapability in the games I saw. And, there's the speed of the defenses in the NFL is much more than the speed of the defenses in college. So I think the Jags are in trouble. I know they're young, they're new, they can make a bunch of excuses. I think the Jets are in deep trouble. And the Eagles, I think, are kind of in trouble, but they're still in that crappy division where Dallas is the favorite, which I don't understand. Is Dak even going to play opening day? They keep saying, yeah, he'll be ready for opening day. Yeah, well, they're playing the Bucs on a Thursday, the first game, and he hasn't thrown a pass in a game, and he's not going to. So I don't know if it's we can't possibly put these guys on the field because they might get hurt, or we know they're going to get hurt at some point. We don't want it to be in the final exhibition game. But I'll say it again, Patrick Mahomes played. If he's playing, it seems to me everybody should be playing. I actually asked Andy Reid with like a negative slant. Andy Reid said, well, the guy's got to play. You got to love Andy Reid now because he's won a Super Bowl. He's a lot more confident now with the media. it's not more of an argument. It's just more of a statement. Well, he's got to play. He's a quarterback. It's very interesting, but there's different approaches with different guys. Maybe if you're a young coach, Salah is new. Joe Judge, Daniel Jones didn't play. I think he is going to play Sunday, but he hasn't played. And I don't know what I'm missing, but these young quarterbacks should all be playing. And the Patriots are the most interesting of all because they have two good quarterbacks. And they had that COVID thing with Cam that wasn't a violation, according to Belichick. A lot of people in New England think Mac Jones is going to start. He's the only quarterback. It's the only quarterback controversy left, I think. But I think Cam has to start. He showed he could sling it. We'll see who starts tomorrow night against the Giants, because whoever starts and plays a couple of, plays 2 drives, he's going to be the starter, presumably. But I think everything else has been decided. But I from coach to coach, it just seems to be different. But the veteran coaches, the Andy Reids play Mahomes. The Bill Belichick, I know he's going to play both, but I think he's going to play his starter first tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see who that is. I think it's Cam. People still think it's a toss-up. I think it's Cam Newton because he showed he could sling it the week before.
He certainly did. We talked about Teddy Bridgewater a little bit. He has to start over Drew Brock and whatnot. But now you look at the Chicago Bears. They went up 9 spaces to take their guy Justin Fields from Ohio State, and a lot of people were going to keep their eye on him in Philly because there were some thoughts with, hey, take the quarterback if Jalen Hurts isn't your guy. He looked okay. All indications are he looks pretty good. What do you do there? Because you have Andy Dalton, who's, he's a serviceable quarterback. He's had some good years. Or do you go with your new guy? What is your philosophy there? And Nick Foles, by the way, who won a Super Bowl MVP, is now the 3rd string quarterback.
Who? He's the first 3rd string quarterback in the history of the NFL to have a statue of himself somewhere.
You're right. I love it.
No, I think they announced they're going with Andy Dalton because I guess he's really the most experienced guy. As much as we love Foles, other than that 1 year with the Eagles, we don't view him to be a 16-game starter, a 17-game starter now. And he's probably happy with that. He's got a big contract. He's got a Super Bowl ring.
Right.
I thought there was some talk. I don't know why he's not traded to like the Jets. The Jets have no backup. Right. The Morgan guy has less experience or the same experience as Zach Wilson. And, he threw a Hail Mary that he completed, but I thought Foles would be much better on another team like that. You got a guy like Flacco who can help Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
If Jalen Hurts gets hurt, you're pretty comfortable with Joe Flacco. Yeah. I understand Super Bowl MVP was a long time ago, but he's a professional quarterback with, I think, over 40,000 yards and a Super Bowl ring where he was the MVP. It might have been the 4 greatest games of his life in those playoffs. He picked the right time, but he looked really good, I thought, against the Jets. And even before that, he looked good. So I don't know what's going on in Chicago. I'm going to say it's Andy Dalton with a short leash. But they have the defense to win, and they've had the defense to win, and they had no offense. I don't know if he can do it, but he did have success in Cincinnati. He also had a lot of weapons in Cincinnati, so I don't know. But Dalton is the starter. I think he'll be on a short leash. Maybe Cam Newton will be the starter, and maybe he'll be on a short leash. But I think most of these guys are going to go with the veterans more so, unless you have nobody like the Jets. Unless you're committed to Jalen Hurts, which we're still not sure how that's going to work out, the Eagles. But, if he's terrible, I assume they're going to bring Flacco in because it's could be another 9-7 wins the division, never mind 7-9. But it's still not a good division. Dallas still doesn't have a good defense. Washington, they're going to rely on Fitzpatrick to be not the sub, but the starter. Can he go 17 games?
Don't know.
But they have that defense. Daniel Jones, nobody sold on Daniel Jones. I don't know. The NFC East is still terrible. It's just not all-time horrifically bad like it was last year.
Interesting. You talk about going with the veterans. We have a guy in Jacksonville, and we'll get back to Urban Meyer's situation a little bit. I mean, Trevor Lawrence was heralded when he was a freshman to be like the next, John Elway or whatnot. And nice record. Only 2 losses in college, albeit both in championship games. But there is some talk of him watching him. Not only did he play poorly or has played poorly, but there's some talk that he's not processing the information quick enough. Is that a red flag? Or is
Well,
that?
that's a big red flag if true. Now, I don't know how much time he's had. Again, I watched all the game, all the drives that he played. You got to be, I understand he's a real good athlete, but you got to be a great athlete to escape these guys. And he to me showed very little. Now, I know there were a couple times he got outside, et cetera, but just in the pocket, he didn't seem to be able to decide to step up or get out, and got buried a couple of times. And I even know they showed Urban Meyer on the sidelines once when that happened, and he was just shaking his head. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Even Urban Meyer in press conferences, you're like, does he know where he is now? Like, this is the big time. This is not, you're going to go out and recruit.
Right.
And I'll say it again, to me, losing Travis Etienne is a big loss. Because I think he's going to be a very good NFL running back. And that just hurts them even more. And oh, by the way, Gardner Minshew is pretty good. You know, I don't think there's any way that Trevor Lawrence right now is a better NFL quarterback than Gardner Minshew. But this is what you've sold to your fans. This may be true, but he certainly doesn't remind you of a young Patrick Mahomes, for example. Maybe that's too much to put there. But he is the #1 draft pick and would have been, as you said, after his freshman year. I just think it's going to be a long year. Now, we've seen guys, right? Wasn't Troy Aikman horrifically bad his first year?
Terrible.
We've seen guys take that and turn it around. But I'm not sure that Emmitt Smith is going to walk through the door in Jacksonville, although I do think Etienne could be a good back. And Michael Irvin, I'm not sure. You know, I mean, they had that big three intact once Troy Aikman became Troy Aikman.
Sure.
But I think Jacksonville's in trouble. I think Trevor Lawrence will still be an excellent quarterback. But yeah, if you hear processing issues, that's a big problem in the NFL. That means we're going to blitz them all day.
Right. You can't pick up the normal stuff. It's going to be, I know the game slows down at some point, but usually you can see the guys that get it, they get it pretty quickly. But that's going to be interesting. Let's talk a little baseball. Before we get to the good teams, how bad are the Baltimore Orioles historically, losing 19 in a row recently?
Wow.
It's baseball. You know how hard that is to do?
That's and don't forget they lost like the first 15 by 2 runs or more, but that was some kind of record as well. I don't know what to say. They've been horrific for a long time. Peter Angelos or his family has run them forever, and they've run them into the ground, and they don't seem to care. It doesn't seem to matter. It's very sad because Baltimore is such a proud franchise, you know, going way back to Jim Palmer and that whole group, Boog Powell. I mean, it's embarrassing. And it's so funny to me that he didn't get the loss, but they beat Shohei Ohtani after like 19 losses in a row. They beat him, although I think the Angels came back and tied the game, and then Baltimore still won. So it's not an Ohtani loss, but it was kind of funny that they would beat him. And the last team that they had beaten before the 19 in a row were the Yankees on August 2nd. So, and now the Yankees, of course, are the hottest team in baseball. But Baltimore is horrifically bad. It's very sad. I don't know if baseball can do anything. I don't know if they can go in and pressure the owner to sell. I think Angelos is alive, but he's given up the main thing. He's like, his 2 sons run it or something. But I've said it forever, as you know, in all sports, not just baseball. Football, you can look, basketball. The owners, they're billionaires in some way, shape, or form, and then they become, you know, owners of a sports team, and they become idiots.
Right.
Think they know. I mean, I'll use the Met guy, Steve Cohen, for sending out a tweet right at the beginning of their 13 brutal games against the Dodgers and the Giants. And he said something about these guys have to hit better. Their stats, their batting averages, their OPS, their whatever, they don't lie. And then they went 2-11 in those 13 games. So they're probably done already. I think they're 9 games out of the second wild card. They're done already. And they even lost to the Nationals last night. Now the theory is they're playing like 14 or 15 games against 2 of the worst teams, including the Marlins and the Nationals. That's it. So you people might think they're going to go 12-2. They ain't going 12-2.
Right.
They're not that good. They lost the best pitcher in baseball. Lindor has been a disappointment, and he's been injured. So I don't know how they think they're going to turn it around. To me, it's almost a pipe dream. But for the owner in the middle of or at the beginning of those 13 games to put out any kind of tweet that's negative towards his team, you got to do that when you're playing the Orioles because you know you're going to win 3 out of the next 4. Not even trying to be funny. You got to have the intelligence to know when to do that. The notion that they were going to have a winning record, I said 4-9 and they were 2-11. They're playing arguably the 2 best teams in baseball when they played the Dodgers and Giants.
Right.
Now, the Nationals aren't terrible. They're not good. They traded all their players. But the Nationals and the Marlins are pretty bad. Now they have like 15 games against them. But again, they're not, the Mets are not that good. I'm sorry, they're just not. And so the Orioles are horrific. It's an embarrassment to baseball. They should do something to have them sell the team to a guy with money who's going to keep them in Baltimore, a great baseball town for decades, and is going to like spend money to get them back to at least being competitive. They're non-competitive now.
No. Conversely, you look at a small market team, and this amazes me because they were in the World Series in 2008 and then recently again. And then, of course, the other 2 teams in their city had won championships in terms of Tampa. The Buccaneers and the Lightning have won back-to-back. But how is that small of a payroll? They're 4 games ahead of the Red Sox right now in the AL East. And they should hang on to that. But how do they do that with – how does one franchise continue to do that with the money they spend? And you look at the Phillies and they stink and they, spend stupid money.
Well, they've had a great system for many years. I thought it was kind of Joe Madden based, but I was wrong. Joe Madden was great. He's the first, they were the first one in with the analytical shift, and they were literally years ahead of many teams. They also did have the #1 draft pick for like 6 or 7 years in a row. But even that's been gone now because they've been good for the last few years. They haven't won it all, but they got to the World Series. We'll always look at last year with Kevin Cash. He's just following, he's following the analytics. So he pulled Blake Snell, and that to me still is one of the biggest errors ever in the postseason. But generally speaking, they're smarter. Their front office is smarter. Their analytic analysis, whatever you think of analytics, is better than virtually everybody. Again, they started the shift. Now everybody in baseball uses the shift, but that was another advantage. And they also going back, 6, 8, 10, 12 years, they had the #1 draft pick every year and got some real good players out of it. But no, they still do it today. You got to give them credit. They get the most out of their players. And I think they're just a little better at all of these things. But again, to me, you have a Kevin Cash. I don't know if you saw the other day, the Mets, they had the guy who made the All-Star team, Taijuan Walker. He had thrown 74 pitches. He was winning 2-1. He was throwing a 2-hitter in the 7th inning. And they took him out of the game. And when the manager came to take him out, he put his hands out. He's a young guy, Walker. He's a little volatile. And he said, "Wow, what are you doing?" You could like read his lips. And they took him out of the game. And of course, the first guy doubles in 2 runs to turn a 2-1 lead into a 3-2 loss. Not only does Walker get pulled, he gets the loss because there were 2 runners. And you see Rojas after the game, you say, well, it was the 3rd time through the order. He sounded just like Kevin Cash. Mm-hmm. And I just don't know why these guys can't have the intelligence to use the eye test just a little.
Yeah.
Just a little. Like in a gigantic game for Tampa Bay last year where Blake Snell was pitching the game of his life. Or even just the other day. But they're all on the same speech pattern now. Wow, 3rd time through. Wow, analytics told me. Well, and you might be right 19 out of 20 times, 9 out of 10 times, whatever. But the 10th one is so obvious to Joe Fan in the stands. I think it should be obvious to the managers. I think you got to leave Blake Snell in. I think you got to leave Taijuan Walker in. Now, you don't know if the next guy would have doubled off of Taijuan Walker and they would have lost. But Blake Snell was even more dominant than Taijuan Walker was the other day. I'm just using that because it literally happened like 3 days ago or 2 days ago or whatever it happened. But nobody's going to forget Blake Snell. That's again, one of the dumbest things in history. And the manager comes out and says, yeah, I do it again. Kevin Cash said it. Rojas said it the other day. Yeah, you could do it again. And you might look like a fool again. because those things are rare, Joe. It's not like he was having a little problem or anything. Both of those guys were dominant, Snell more so. But I think when you can commit to the analytics in total, that really cost the Tampa Bay Rays. While I've complimented them for being the best at it, everybody knows. I won't say it's throwing the ball by Seattle against the Patriots in the Super Bowl, but it's in the neighborhood because you don't know what was going to happen. You knew if they ran the ball, they were going to score. I mean, there was like no doubt about that. But you have to think if Blake Snell stayed in the game, he would have been fine. If Walker the other day stayed in the game, he would have been fine. And those are the rare exceptions. I just don't know why the analytics guys can't go with the rare exceptions because they don't. They don't.
It's funny you mentioned the Blake Snell incident, comparing it to Pete Carroll, where the manager said he'd do it again. Pete Carroll said that too when they asked him. He said, "Yeah, we do it again. That was our What?
I think in today's world, you almost have to say that. You almost can't say I totally screwed up. If I had to do it all over again, of course I'd leave Blake in. Of course I'd run the ball.
Right.
Of course I'd give it to Lynch. We'd win the Super Bowl. How stupid was I? Yeah, you don't really see people taking responsibility for their mistakes anymore. Because then they get slaughtered.
Right, they would get slaughtered. And management's going to be like, well, you're admitting you screwed up, and that doesn't look good for them. Doesn't look good for them at all. Hey, Miguel Cabrera, we talked last week. He was at 499. Boom, hits 500. I think after we taped that podcast last week, and he's now one of 28 players. 500 home run. That's pretty good.
Yeah, he's at 501 now, and I think the last time I saw it, he was like, I want to say, maybe 35 hits away from 3,000. And let me be the first to say, when he gets 3,000 hits, he's going to be the first guy in baseball history to have 500 homers, 3,000 hits, and a triple crown.
Wow.
And 4 batting titles, by the way.
Wow.
So everybody, I just saw a thing on SportsCenter today where they have like the 5 guys who are hitting over 310 lifetime who have 500 homers. The only 2 modern era guys are Manny Ramirez and Miguel Cabrera, who are probably certainly the 2 greatest right-handed hitters of the last 30 years, and arguably 2 of the greatest hitters of all time. Then when you go, you get back to like Jimmy Fox and Ted Williams and Ruth, all-time greats, but who played in an era where hitting 300 wasn't even that good. You hit 300 today, you probably are in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, oh, totally.
And Cabrera will be one of them. I don't know if Manny will get in because of the whatever he was taking. But Cabrera, I've never really heard much negative about him. But I think he's going to be the first guy, and I'm surprised I haven't heard it elsewhere. But I looked at all the Triple Crown winners, and most of them are from decades ago, so they're not 500 home run hitters. But Ted Williams, of course, is one. And I don't think there's very many others. Lou Gehrig had 493 homers. He won a Triple Crown. He would have maybe gotten 3,000 hits, but he got Lou Gehrig's disease, and his career was cut short. I think Cabrera is going to be the first guy ever with 500 homers, 3,000 hits, and a Triple Crown, and that immediately puts him in the elite guys of all time. For his average to be still now today 311, that's incredible. I hate to say it, to me, that's like 330 or 340 in the old days. I really, maybe some guys can do it numerically, but if you just hit if you hit 275 today, to me, that's like hitting 300 with the shifts, and it's okay to strike out 192 times as long as you hit 30 homers. I think Cabrera is really one of a kind, and I don't think you're going to see a guy after him hit 500 homers and get 3,000 hits. I don't think that's going to happen. And to hit like 310 or over, I think that's impossible. The one guy the one guy who's under 310 but is 500 homers is Hank Aaron, who's 305. But all these guys, Mays, Mantle, Aaron, they kind of hung on in the end. Mantle went down to 298. He didn't have 3,000 hits. Mays went down to 302. But I don't think he had 3,000 hits either. So it's an incredible accomplishment. But I think when Cabrera gets to 3,000 hits, he's going to be one of a kind. There's not going to be another guy.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's going to be one coming in the future either.
Amazing. Hey, want to wrap up with some, I don't know if it's the lighter side of sports or the dumber side of sports. And it made me think when we talked about this in pre-production, my first night in Lancaster when I worked for the NBC affiliate up there, we covered like 60 different high schools and all these towns over there. There's so many cities and towns. I had a chance to talk about the Ephrata Cougars or something. And I said, I don't really know how to pronounce that. I'm going to take a chance though. And I said, Ephrata. I got killed. The phone lines were ringing for like 45 minutes after I got back to my desk. All right. So never did that again. If I don't know, I'm going to make sure, but this one doesn't compare to Ephrata. I mean, we're talking about Raj Gilbert, one of the great Rangers of all time. Tell me a story.
Well, I mean, it's very sad, but to see in New York on ABC, the main sports guy who's been here like 5 or 6 years, it was kind of a big deal when he came in because he was from the Midwest somewhere, I don't know where. There was a woman doing the weekends on ABC in New York, and she got jumped over to hire this guy, and she quit. Now they have Sam Ryan, who's very good on the weekends, but this guy it was a Sunday night, which usually wouldn't work, but Raj Gilbert, as you know, died Sunday night. And just briefly on Gilbert, Ranger superstar, Mr. Ranger. I have a nice 9-minute thing on Speaking of Sports with Steve Kallas just on Gilbert, but just quickly, 406 goals, most goals by a Ranger ever, 1,021 points, most points by a Ranger ever, Hall of Famer, first number retired, number 7, first Ranger number retired. So you would think if you've been in New York for 5 or 6 years doing sports, even if you're not from New York, you would think you know who Raj Gilbert is. But this guy did a thing where he said deeply sad to hear about the loss of Ranger great and Hall of Famer Rod Gilbert. And I'm sitting on my couch just watching the sports, and I'm like, yeah, come on. I don't think it's a good time to joke. But he said Rod Gilbert 3 times. On the weekends on ABC, they go to commercial. So, maybe he's going to correct it. Somebody there has to say, Gilbert. They come back from commercial and he goes, with my humblest apologies, we mourn the loss of Rod Gilbert. So somebody got the bear part of Gilbert, but nobody there knew about the Gil part.
Gilbert.
And this guy, I think Mantle's like the greatest ever, but he's like the Mantle of the Rangers. And I understand it's hockey, which isn't baseball. But this guy was a lifer with the Rangers, played his whole career, highest scorer ever, Hall of Famer, popular guy who worked for the Rangers for like 30, 35 years after he retired. You got to know how to pronounce his name. I'm sorry. And so for the rest of the time, this guy's in New York, I'll just look at him and think Rod Gilbert, because you can't do that to a Ranger Hall of Famer. It's what you said. You did it on a little thing at a little time. Good thing you made the mistake then.
Right.
You would never make that mistake. And plus, in today's world, it's so you can just hit pronunciation things.
Yeah, exactly.
And find it out.
Computer.
It's not like the old days. You better know somebody who could help you if you don't know. It was unfair. I don't want that to look. Gilbert was Mr. Ranger, one of the greatest Rangers who ever played, Hall of Famer, etc. But to have that thing kind of happen, and you got to wonder what the people are watching, because everybody knows Rod Gilbert. You don't even have to be a hockey fan in New York to know Rod Gilbert. One of the most popular guys, real good-looking guys. The women loved him all forever, his career, and after that, it's very sad that had to happen. That's all I'll say. But again, I would direct people to Speaking of Sports with Steve Kallas and put up a thing the next day. It's 9 minutes, but it gives a broader base on his career. 2 back surgeries, 2 spinal fusion surgeries in the early 60s, Joe. So I can't imagine that he overcame that. Not a big man, I can't believe that he overcame that and played like 15 more years after he had the second one. Hurt the first one just skating over some debris and then going into the boards in the minor leagues. And then just an incredible career, an incredible guy on and off the ice. But to have that butchered in New York like that on a New York sports report to me, it's unforgivable, but I guess these things happen.
And they do happen. I just want to ask you real quick, because obviously you lived in New York all your life, but in terms of heartthrobs, there's a bigger heartthrob, Raj Gilbert or Ron Duguay? Because he was
that's a tough one.
Sassoon jeans and all the commercials.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Duguay swept through New York when he came in, and that was a little after Gilbert. Boy, that's hard. I'd say there was more passion for Duguay, but long-term love for Rod Gilbert, because he was still around when Duguay was around. I don't think he was playing. but he was still around. That's a great. I thought you were going to say Joe Namath.
I should have said Joe Willie. You're right.
But New York has had its share over the years, like everybody has their share. But and look, Lundqvist today.
I was going to say Lundqvist, yeah.
He's that heartthrob as well. But I think because Gilbert played his entire career in New York, stuck around New York so long term from the early '60s till into the 21st century, I would still give it to Rod Gilbert.
All right, great stuff, man. Hey, great stuff as usual. And happy birthday once again, my friend Steve Kallas. You can wish him a happy birthday on his Facebook forum page, Speaking of Sports with Steve Kallas. You can also check out his videos, westchestercountypost.com on YouTube. You can find this podcast on YouTube every week. And you can follow me on Twitter at Joe Staszak 975. Great stuff again, buddy. Happy birthday. I know you're hanging out with your kids today. Have a great time, and I'll catch up with you.
Always a pleasure, Joe.
You too. All right, folks. Thanks for watching. And again, wish Steve a happy birthday and thank him for all the stuff he puts out there. He does a great job. We'll talk to you next week.